Come on, get your bounce back. It's episode 32 of For Our Edification. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of For Our Edification. I'm Eddie Francis, and this podcast, it is personal leadership goodness, I tell you. You can get past episodes of For Our Edification by going to eddiefrancis.com. Also, there are some past episodes on YouTube, and you can get this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. That's what they say. Obstacles suck, right? But obstacles are a part of life. What gets us about obstacles? I mean, what makes them so disgusting and hard to get past at times? And what gets us past these obstacles? Well, PJ Dixon is someone who has lived with obstacles in many more ways than one. And it's not just his own, but he helps other people with their obstacles. So we're going to find out from him what it takes to get past obstacles. The views and opinions expressed on For Our Edification do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the hosts, guests, or any entities with which we are affiliated. PJ Dixon, he's an international speaker, resiliency expert, teaching people to embrace and live the resilient way. And he's a former wheelchair athlete, which I didn't know this about you. International traveler, founder of 2 nonprofit organizations and 4 disabled sports programs, a published author, watercolorist, acrylics painter, 10th degree black belt. I definitely did not know that about you. Martial arts.
I'll come for you.
Golly, man. And women's self-defense instructor and a meditation teacher. Now, the meditation teacher part, I can definitely see. PJ's been inducted into the National Hall of Fame for people with disabilities, awarded the Distinguished Gold Dragon Medal from the International, Bujinkan. Is it Bujinkan?
Oh, yeah, close. Bujinkan. That's right. Yeah.
Bujinkan Dojo, recognized with the extremely rare Communication and Leadership Award from Toastmasters International, and nominated to carry the Olympic torch through Tucson in 2002. PJ, welcome to For Our Edification. How are you, my friend?
I am thrilled to be here. I'm great, actually. And I'm really glad that I get to call you friend and brother, because my life is so much richer because of you.
Stop it, man. Your check is in the mail. Same here, though, PJ. Same here, man. It's good to reconnect
Thanks,
with you.
brother.
And so I got to tell you this thing. So PJ, I got a chance to meet PJ long time ago. We were doing this thing with Monster, and it was the diversity leadership program. That's where we met.
Yes.
And I want to say it was the one at Cal Berkeley. I think that was the one where we met, if I'm not mistaken.
When we first met, I don't remember which one.
I think it was that one. I think we were doing the one at Cal Berkeley, and PJ had more energy than anybody, just about. Cut it up on the stage, by the way. Cut it up big time on the stage. Man, so listen, I really want to talk to you because one of the things that I really, and you know what, I have to thank you for this, because one of the things that I've been trying to figure out what is the message that I feel most passionate about. PJ and I had a conversation a few weeks ago, and I'm going, I want to do some more stuff with personal branding. And PJ was like, well, what about leadership? And I was like, yeah, that's cool, but personal branding. But get this, PJ. So here's where we are right now. This is where we have landed on the Eddie Mothership. Personal leadership, man. Personal leadership. And so that's what I really, really want to talk about. And when it comes to overcoming obstacles, I mean, the first thing I want to know from you is, how did you even get to this point where you wanted to talk about resilience and overcoming obstacles? What got you there?
Yeah, so when I think about what got me to the place of wanting to help people overcome their obstacles, it's very simple. My whole entire life, I've wanted people to be happy. And anytime that people have come to me to ask me questions about, like, how they overcome a particular problem or deal with the situation, or how do I do it when they're feeling particularly weak, anytime we get somebody to the point where they're like, oh, you know what? Thank you. I do feel better. I don't feel like I'm carrying that weight anymore. Instantly, I feel better. I remember when I was 9 or 10 years old, And I remember, and I wasn't raised in the church, the synagogue, the mosque, the temple, none of that. And I climbed up on my bed at 9 or 10 years old, and I had just heard about, I had just really sort of experienced suffering, not like for myself, but just realized like the outside world, sometimes people suffer. And I was
Mm-hmm.
heartbroken.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I didn't realize that before. I didn't understand it before. And I was heartbroken. And I remember climbing up on my bed and thinking, and not even thinking, but praying, God, whatever, it takes, give me their pain, give me their suffering so that
Hmm.
they don't have to carry it. And I remember being in tears, and my mom wasn't there. My dad wasn't there. I wasn't at home alone, but nobody was in the room with me. I wasn't really taught necessarily to pray. It was just something that I did
Mm-hmm.
kind of independently on my own. Of course, there was the nightly prayers, when we were kids back in the day. But I just climbed up on my bed and I said, God, give me all their pain, give me all their suffering, I'll carry it. And what I meant was everybody in the world, anybody out there, I just didn't want them to carry the pain and the suffering, because I recognized when people struggled, when they experienced pain or suffering or any kind of struggle or any kind of resistance, they often quit, and they were sad, they were unhappy. That
Mm.
broke my heart because I was so compassionate. I really wanted to see people live the life that they wanted to live. I wanted to see people be excited and happy about being alive. I was excited and happy about being alive. I wanted that for everybody else. And so you asked that question, and I gave you an answer, but then I remembered that story of me being 9 or 10. And I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
make sure I came back to that, like that authentic piece. I've always been the one people have come to. I've been
Mm-hmm.
speaking since I was 7 years old. And I've always
Mm.
been the one person that everybody came to and said, hey, I've got a problem. So I think for me, it's that feeling of knowing that my disabled body, not able to, help carry things and, do very much physical stuff for people, I could carry people's heart. And that was important to me.
Okay, so somebody gives you their pain and suffering. What do you do with it, though?
I would carry it so they didn't have to. I mean,
But doesn't
people
that
give
does
it.
that drag you down though?
Well, I'm saying that when I was a kid, I said, God, give it to me so I can carry it
Yeah.
so no one else has to.
Hmm.
Would it have? Sure, of course, it would have crushed me. I would have been crushed under the weight of people's sadness and suffering and struggle globally. And I wasn't talking about one person. I was
Hmm.
talking about the world, Eddie. Like everybody,
Yeah.
give me everyone's struggle and suffering. But nowadays, it's not that I don't carry other people's pain and suffering now. Right now, it's more
Hmm.
like, hey, how can I help you release it? What's going on?
Mm-hmm.
What are you holding on to? What are you dragging? See, I look at it like this, right? I believe that if we look at all of us like a sailboat, um, and the wind is like drive, right, and the sail is like desire, um, we can't get anywhere until we pull up the anchor. And the
Wow.
problem is that, when the wind blows, meaning that drive is serious, like we really want this, we're not going to go very far. Why? Because we've got our anchor down. We've got to lift that anchor or cut the line and release that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's going to hold us in place or tear our ship apart. Right. And so we don't want that. And usually, when I say it tears our ship apart, think about a relationship. You want something, the other person wants something different. The relationship often gets torn apart. Why? Because you're not moving together, you're not sailing together. You got to lift
Hmm.
that anchor. You got to find the one thing that's holding you down, holding you back. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And
Yeah.
it's interesting to hear you talk about how when you were a kid, it was give it to me, but now it's let's figure out how to release it. Especially with all the talk and the conversation right now that people have about self-care and who's caring for the people who are caring for the people,
Hmm.
and so that's why I was wondering, so like, man, what do you do with that? So it is interesting. So somebody comes to you
Yep.
and you spend some time, you work with them, and you know when you start hearing whatever it is people are going through, and you have said, okay, I'm going to get you over this obstacle or over these obstacles in your
Sure.
life, whatever it is.
Yeah.
um how do you make sure that you are in a place so that you can really help them get through? Because we all have our own stuff that we manage.
Of course.
So how do you get yourself in that place so that you can get them over whatever the obstacle is for them?
Honestly, I think there's a couple of ways to answer this. First and foremost, I'm just generally a pretty happy guy. I don't let a whole lot bother me. I
Yeah.
don't carry a whole lot of weight. I let most things go because to carry that weight doesn't serve me. And any
Mm.
kind of attachment, not any kind of attachment, but most attachments are just going to cause us to suffer. When somebody comes to me, how do I help them get over that problem without carrying the weight? I have a 4-step process. First 2 steps are awareness, right? Because all
Hmm.
transformation begins with awareness.
Yeah.
If you're not actually aware of what's bothering you or what's holding you back and what you want simultaneously, in contrast to what's holding you back, then we're not going to be able to get anywhere.
Hmm.
However, what we can do is move on to step 2 and identify, well, we're still in step 1 really, which is, okay, well, what don't you want to carry? What's burdening you? What don't you like? What's holding you back? And these are little tiny anchors that we can lift. So, or we can let go of. Step 2 for me is let go, right? So, what we want to do is identify the things that are holding us back and begin to let those go. Sometimes those chains, if you think about the anchor, right? An
Yeah.
anchor is attached to the boat, which is you, your being, your person, right? But what attaches the anchor to the boat? A chain, a rope,
Hmm.
a line, a cord, right? And so if you think about your past as the anchor, that past is not going to change. No matter what's gone
Hmm.
on in the past, it's never going to change. It is what it is. It was what it was, and it's going to continue to be
Yeah.
that forever and ever. What it means to you might be a different thing. However, the problem isn't the anchor. The problem is not the past. It's the attachment that we have to it. So
Huh.
if we recognize that attachment, the chain, the rope that's binding us or tying us up, that chain can be lodged into our brain, how we think about ourselves. It can be lodged into our heart, how we feel about ourselves. It can be lodged in our guts, right? Where we just don't feel like, I don't feel like I'm worthy. I'm not strong enough. I'm worried. I'm scared. In the case of sexual trauma, it can be lodged into people's sexual organs, right? Not
Yeah.
lodged in, but like connected to. Okay.
Yeah.
And so as soon as we go, oh, I'm aware that I feel the suffering here. Okay, well, what's it attached to? It's attached to when my dad said, or when I broke up with, or when I lost A, B, or C. Okay, now we have something that we can work with. The other thing is, most people come to you with a problem, and when they come to you with a problem, it's almost inevitably the presenting problem. And so I have to listen and ask questions so we get past the presenting problem and get to the actual core problem, the real root. Because
Yeah.
so often the presenting problem isn't the truth. What I found, I'm a pretty spiritual guy, so I hope it's okay if every once in a while I drop into spirituality. But for
Sure
me,
thing. Do it, man. Go
okay,
for it.
okay, okay, cool. So for me, I believe that I don't need to know anything when God knows everything. I just have to be able to
Mm.
listen.
Hmm.
And so
Hmm.
a lot of times people, clients will say to me, "Hey, how did you know that about me?" And I say, "I didn't. I just heard it because you're in too much chaos to be able to hear it right now. So I'm just a conduit. I'm just listening. I'm just hearing it." And so,
Yeah.
um, what I do often is I recognize, and this is maybe only in the past couple of years that I've been able to decipher this, is I find when I don't have an answer, I used to want to turn my brain on and like start solving for the presenting problem. But now
Hmm.
I'm like, okay, there's no answer. So I ask more questions. And what happens is they start to go deeper, deeper, deeper. Then all of a sudden, when a piece of wisdom rises, then I go, okay, this is the piece that we're going to address. And inevitably, when we address that, it's like untying the anchor from our heart, our mind, our guts, our sex organs, right? It's
Hmm.
like untying it. And then we just set the chain down, right? Or we just untie the rope and we set the rope down. We don't need to carry it with. The chain and the rope stay back there. The attachment stays back there. Then we can start to sail freely into the future.
God,
I
man.
always say, I say this, I always say that the doors to our future, the doors to your remarkable future are in your past. What do I mean by that? If there's an anchor stuck in the ground, deep, deep in the ground, stuck in the ground, and there's a chain stuck to my heart, and I say, I want that, and I go running after it, at some point that chain is going to go taut. And when it goes taut, right, I'm going to pull off my feet and pull back into the past. Why? Because that chain goes tight, and when I get pulled off my feet, I get pulled back into the past a little bit, enough that it creates slack in the in the chain and I go, oh, okay, now I can see it, I can feel it, I can manipulate it, I can move it around, I can
Yeah.
play with it, I feel it, I know what it is. Let me figure out how I can get this untangled from my heart, untangled from my mind, untangled from my body, untangled from my guts, right? Once I can get it untangled, then I'm free.
Yeah, yeah. You're listening to For Our Edification. I'm Eddie Francis, and I'm talking to my man, PJ Dixon, man. And you know what? Awareness. It is
Yes.
amazing how powerful awareness is. And I can speak for myself on this one because, I had this really interesting conversation. I had some family over not too long ago, and we were talking about certain characteristics that run in the family. And I was
Yes.
telling them, I said, the last situation that I was in, the last place where I was employed, it didn't end on a high note. There was
Mhm.
something that happened with me
Sure.
that it just did not end on a high note. And I said, I had to think, and I said I kept playing that moment back and back over, over and over. And I said it occurred to me that in our family we have a thing, and there's this thing that we do. And when I became aware of it, when I really thought about, because I was beating myself up about it,
Yeah.
and when I realized, wait a minute, this is something that's actually a thing with my like there's some consistency there. There's a trend with us. And when I realized that, when I was more aware of that, then I was able to deal with it. And it was amazing how quickly I was able to deal with it once I was aware of what it was. And I do have to say, though, I got to shout out because I'm in therapy, and I got to shout my therapist out. Of course, I can't say this person's name, but I got to shout my therapist out because what they did is they really got me to really think and to process and all of that good stuff. And they got me to really stop beating myself up, because they said that was my biggest problem. They were like, you need to, Eddie, stop beating yourself up about every little thing. But
Yeah.
it's interesting to hear you bring up how connected awareness is to getting over an obstacle. And it
Well,
sounds like a small thing, but it's a huge thing. It is a
it's
really,
massive.
really big thing.
All transformation begins with awareness. If I don't
Yeah.
know that, if I'm walking down a path, you and I are hiking, and a boulder rolls down the path and lands in the middle of the path, and maybe we're blind, right?
Yeah.
And but the path has been something that we've traversed repeatedly over and over. We've been trained on it. We know the steps. We know where it turns. Everything is great. But we come across the boulder, right? We don't necessarily know what it is. We don't even have to be blind, right? We come across this
Hmm.
big boulder and we're like, whoa, there's this big problem. Like, right? We're aware that there's a problem, but what we're not aware of in that moment is what our options are, because all we're doing is focusing on the problem. I wrote this the other day, actually.
We're focusing on the problem and not the options.
Yeah, yeah,
That that's
exactly. Yeah,
that's a that's a huge statement, man.
yeah, yeah. So I wrote this
Wow.
just yesterday or the day before. I wrote, is there fairness in your awareness?
Wow.
If
Okay.
your confidence is low, the answer is no. Is there fairness in your awareness? Meaning, is there judgment? Right?
Oh,
And
okay.
so usually if you know that you're struggling,
Hmm.
right, with something, but you may not necessarily know what you're struggling with. And so what happens is we tend to beat ourselves up, which is what you just said. I was beating myself up. Or
Hmm.
your therapist was like, hey, let's get you to a place where you're not beating yourself up. There's not
Hmm.
fairness in that awareness. The awareness that you have of, I'm not smart enough, I'm not good enough, I make all these mistakes. Whatever it is that people say to themselves, it's usually unfair. You would almost never say that to somebody else,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And why? Because you have too much natural compassion not to do that to somebody else, but you beat yourself up. So, is there fairness in your awareness? Meaning, what are you aware of? And, well, I'm aware of the problem. Okay. So, what do you focus on? I'm only focused on the problem. So, that means that the only thing
Hmm.
in my consciousness, the only thing in my awareness is problem. Is that fair? Because there's so many other opportunities, right? Well, what if you step back from the problem and you go, okay, well, what am I now aware of? And you go, I'm aware of option A, B, C, D, and E and problem, but I'm looking at the
Hmm.
problem sort of peripherally because I'm looking at the options. Okay, is there fairness in this awareness? Yeah. Why? Because how do you know? Well, if your confidence is low, the answer is no. Well, I'm actually feeling better. Okay, better, meaning what? Meaning I see opportunities that I have. Okay, cool. So how's your confidence? You know, I'm still a little sad about what happened, maybe, but I'm feeling much better. I'm feeling much more confident that I'm going to figure out a way to through this. Okay, great. So to me, that awareness is critical in everything that we do because, in fact, I had to add it in to the work that I do. I used to talk about the three keys: letting go, committing fully, and getting excited about your next big challenge. But I realized that I had
Hmm.
to add awareness in because nobody had it. They didn't know what
Yeah.
they were upset about,
Yeah.
right? And what they were upset about was almost inevitably the presenting problem. When couples struggle, they're not fighting with each other, they're fighting with each other's past. And they don't know that. They're
Hmm.
fighting with each other's baggage. It's baggage against baggage, past against past.
Hmm.
Instead of going, hold on, what's really bothering me? And then that level of awareness. And one other piece to this is that when we are in that state where we may be beating ourselves up, or we're ruminating, right? And our brains are just ruminating. The problem is that we're allowing our unconscious mind to process instead of allowing our conscious mind to process. The unconscious mind isn't designed to resolve the issue, it's just designed to remember, recall, and reveal the problem. It does that so that the conscious mind goes, oh, that's the problem. Well, let me process through this and figure out what I want to do. So then it can resolve the problem. These are the four R's, right? Remember, recall, and reveal, or shift over to conscious processing and figuring out what's really bothering you so you can R resolve that. And that's what journaling does. I don't
Hmm.
physically journal very well because I go to sleep when I do it. So I wind up going to the mirror and talking to the mirror. That works really well for me. That's what I've done my
Huh.
whole life. I've talked to the mirror.
So one of the things I'm curious about is what's it like for you whenever you have someone who has they have gotten to that point where they first of all, how do you know somebody is well, let me ask you this. How do you know somebody is ready to actually
Mm.
go beyond the obstacle?
Yeah, man, that's such a great question. I'm wrestling with somebody right now who I desperately
Yeah.
want to help. And I feel like, and I do this so often, where I want their healing more than they do. I want them to have a better life than
Mm.
they do. And I get trapped by that on occasion, or sucked in, not really trapped, but it's sort of a magnetic draw to me because I'm so excited about what their life could be like versus what their life is like. And they're often so anchored to what their life is like that they're not really seeing what their life could be like.
Hmm.
So what I find works pretty well is to just give them a small task and then check in with them and see how it went. Oh, I didn't do it. Okay. They're probably not really ready. Okay. Oh, I did it, but I only did it once. Okay. Well, how come? Let's maybe talk about that a little bit. Right. Or absolutely, I did it. And that was amazing. This is how I feel. Thank you so much. This is what's coming up now. Great. They're definitely ready. So people self-select. Anybody,
Hmm. Hmm.
anybody who comes to you. In fact, let me tell you this story. I've one of my closest friends. He and I were on a call a couple weeks ago, and he is one of the smartest human beings I know, hands down one of the smartest guys I know. And um, he's in Europe right now doing two master's programs. Did a bachelor's, and I was working on two masters, and he is a glutton for punishment because their education program over there is so much harder than ours over here. Whew, I feel so
Hmm.
bad for the guy. And simultaneously, when we jump on a call, being one of the smartest people that I know, I'm always shocked when we get to this point where he goes, "Okay, can you help me?" And I say, "Sure." And he starts to talk, and then I offer some suggestions. And the first thing out of his mouth with all of my suggestions is, "The problem is, the problem is, the problem with that is, the problem is." And
Mm.
finally, I reached a point, and this was just a few weeks ago. I reached a point, and I said, "Hold on, buddy, hold on. I, I'm one of your best friends, right?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I said, "What I'm going to say is probably going to sting just a little. I don't mean it to, but it's going to. And please forgive me ahead of time. I'm still one of your besties. I want to make sure that we're still close. Okay. But the problem is every sentence that you say starts with the problem
Come
is."
on, miss.
And his brow furrowed. And I said, the problem is that you believe that the problem is, right? The problem is, and I kept doing this. I did this for like 3 or 4 minutes. And he kept trying to interrupt me. And I said, no, 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 no. Wait, I'm not done. The problem is that you think that there's no answer. The
Yeah.
problem is you don't really want a solution. The problem is you want to keep looking at the problem. The problem is you don't really want help. You actually just want to complain. The problem is, and I did this for like 3 solid minutes. And then I said, do you remember when you were over at my house 6, 7, 8 years ago, and you stood 4 feet from me right there, and you said, and you kept yeah butting me, and I said, you know what, buddy, I love you, but I can't be friends with somebody who is a yeah butter. And you were like, what do you mean? And I said, every single time I try to say something, you say yeah, but every time I encourage you, you say yeah, but, and to this guy's I'm not sure how to say it, to his credit, right? To
Hmm.
this guy's credit, when I told him about yeah butting, he didn't yeah butt for another probably 3 years. And
Yeah.
then
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
when I did this with him about the problem is, the problem is, the problem is, literally he reached out to me like 3 or 4 days later, and probably like 4 days later, and he'd accomplished tons, and not once did the words "the problem is" come out of his mouth.
It's like the Captain Jack Sparrow quote. The problem isn't a problem; it's your attitude about the problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You know, there's a great story. For me, I don't know if you guys, if any of your listeners know Jocko Willink, right? Jocko Willink is a former Navy SEAL turned business strategist. Okay, well, Jocko tells the story of climbing on top of some kind of ocean vessel with his team, a SEAL team, and they look around. And as I remember the story, maybe I'm telling it wrong, but it's still, the principle is still here. Jocko got up there and he said they looked around and the top of the ship was not at all what they'd studied. Somehow it was maybe a different ship. It wasn't the wrong
Hmm.
ship,
Hmm.
right? It was still the right ship, but somehow the layout on the top was different than what they expected. So they got up there and they stopped and they're like, okay, what do we do now, right? And Jocko stepped back. Now I don't know if Jocko physically stepped back and literally
Hmm.
stepped back, or if he figuratively stepped back and took in all the information. But either way, and I teach my clients to physically step back. I physically step back sometimes, right? I say, okay, leave my problem here, my suffering, my struggle here. Physically step back. Okay, now that I'm not in the problem, okay, now I can see the options. So Jocko steps back and he looks around and he goes, okay. And then he stepped forward, stepped back into his body, or stepped back into his position. And he said, okay, we go this way. Now, he wasn't even the commanding officer, but SEALs, when one makes a decision, they all follow it,
Hmm.
right? Because they don't have time to discuss it. They trust their team. Somebody made
Hmm.
a decision which is intended to keep everybody alive and save, whoever it is they're trying to save. And so the principle of this story is that he didn't stay here looking at the problem. If you and I are hiking and the boulder falls and we just stare at the boulder, we're looking at the
Hmm.
problem. But the moment we start to step back, all of a sudden we go, oh, look at all this space around the boulder.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So what are our options? Just walk around it. Okay. Might be more fun to climb over it. That sounds fun. There's a cool little crack down there. You think I can fit? I don't know. You want to try? I'll pull you out if you don't. All right, let's do it. Right? So now we have options, and that's the delicious part. But we're right here in the muck and the mire and the gross stuff, right? The problem, we're blinded by it. I call it opportunity blindness. We can't see the opportunities because we're looking so closely at the problem.
Yeah.
That doesn't feel good, right? That's not fun. That's not overcoming the obstacle. That's feeding all of your attention into the obstacle.
Yeah.
Yuck.
Yeah. 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 I'm sorry. You mentioned a boulder. I can't stop but think of Shrek. When Donkey said, I like that boulder. That's a nice boulder." But man,
Oh my god, I love that show. It's so funny.
it's really obviously. I mean, obviously, obstacles are not easy to get over.
No. Well,
But
they can be, but they don't have to be. Or
well, I was about to
they
say,
aren't
but
always, but they don't have to be.
they can. You can at least make it a manageable obstacle, at least somehow.
Yeah,
You can find some way to try to do it.
yeah,
The other thing that you mentioned that I thought was really interesting is you mentioned chaos. That people are kind of they have this way. We all have this way of putting ourselves through some kind of chaos, and
yeah,
you
yeah,
know you go from this point of, I mean, it's interesting that you have this thing whenever you see a huge obstacle. Well, let me speak for myself. whenever I see something that I perceive to be a huge obstacle, and it's funny
Yeah.
with your buddy, because I used to be the yeah, but person. I used to be that
Uh,
person. And
uh,
I also, it's funny, he's a lot like I used to be. I was also the problem is person every
mm,
single time.
mm,
That was me all the way.
yeah.
It's interesting to hear you talk about that, but to also realize that the yeah buts and the problem is that helps create the chaos because,
It does.
or it helps keep the chaos going, and I'm
Yeah.
sitting
And it
and,
keeps
and
them stuck, right? It keeps their feet in the
right.
mud.
And you're sitting here like, I don't understand why I'm feeling so chaotic right now. I understand why I'm feeling so chaotic. And somebody comes to you, they hold their hand out, and they say, you know what, Eddie? Let me pull you out the mud. Yeah, but if I get out the mud, then, the
Yes.
problem is I
Yes.
don't know where your hands have been. It's like, yeah, but Eddie, but you're already in the mud, eh? So it's interesting.
I call it the Eeyore problem, right?
Mm,
Eeyore, I got you a box of tails. Well,
well,
I'll probably just lose those two. Oh my God, there's like 100, bro. You're not gonna lose one every minute for the next 100 minutes, right?
yeah, man, yeah. Okay.
So,
So
so
you
let me
got
ask you a question. You
yeah. Go
used to
ahead.
be that guy.
Yeah.
How did you change that? Because if we're talking about overcoming obstacles, you're brilliant. So we should be asking you, how did you shift that? What did you come to a level of awareness first? Did you let something go? Did you commit to something? I mean, these are my first three steps anyway,
Yeah, I
right?
mean,
Did you get excited about something?
you know what? I was aware that I had a major problem that I wanted to solve.
Okay.
And I didn't get there easily. I mean, thank goodness I have an excellent wife who was just like, okay,
Yeah.
listen,
Yeah.
here's what's going on. Here's what I hear, and that's it. And she didn't say go get some help or anything like that, but she just kept, she just kept letting me know, hey, I'm
Yeah.
hearing this. I'm hearing this.
Yeah.
And of course, I want to be the best absolute husband I can be. I want to be the best father I can be. I want to be the best
Yeah.
coworker I can be. So
Yeah.
I was like, okay, cool. Something is
Mm.
going on and I got to do something. And when I went to go deal with it, I knew what I wanted. I knew what I wanted to do. I knew what problem I wanted to solve. I
Okay.
will say this though. I will say that I wasn't, when I walked into therapy, I wasn't necessarily aware of everything,
Mm.
so I was just aware that I needed to do something. And then I realized along the way, oh, there's an iceberg here. I mean, there's
Yeah.
a whole lot of stuff
Yeah.
going on,
Yeah.
and it is a very, very deep iceberg that I got to deal
Yeah.
with. And I think
Were,
that was my
did you go
thing.
because were you sad? Were you depressed? Were you angry? Were you confused? Were you
I
unable to
was
solve problems? Were you constantly
several things,
stressed?
unable to solve problems, angry, frustrated, confused, very disgusted by a lot of things happening. But I wasn't aware of how much I was putting on myself. That's the thing. That was actually the biggest piece of awareness because it was to me.
Can you hold on?
Mhm.
I'm going to interrupt you because this is a really important piece I think for your audience. You were unaware of how much you were putting on yourself. Don't
Yeah.
wax over that. What does that mean?
I was unaware of how much I was blaming myself for. I kept
Um,
putting these burdens on myself.
uh,
And it was interesting because as I'm talking to my therapist, I'm saying, well, I'm just holding myself accountable. And she said, great, that's noble. It was like, that's a noble thing, but you're also punishing yourself.
hmm,
And that was the part I wasn't aware of. I wasn't aware of how much I was punishing myself. And so there were all these issues of guilt and shame and all these other issues that we've been talking through. And actually, what's funny? I actually felt guilty about dropping the guilt because I was just
yeah,
like,
yeah. No,
I was,
listen, we should definitely talk about that.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
a real thing. Yeah, yeah. Go ahead, go on.
Yeah. And so, but I mean, that is really that's how I started to build towards getting past the obstacle.
Yes.
I was like, okay, now I can clearly see what this. That's the other thing. I couldn't clearly see what the obstacle was either.
Because
it was kind
you
of
were too
like,
close to it.
yeah. Well, either I actually felt like I was driving through a fog, and the obstacle kept pulling away from me as I was driving through the fog.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and I was just
Okay.
like, I'm driving, and I know I'm gonna, I know I'm gonna see something
Yeah.
that is an obstacle, and once I see it, I can deal with it. But it felt
Okay.
like it kept pulling away from me. That was the
Okay.
thing. That's how it felt to me.
Okay. That's
PJ,
interesting. That's really interesting.
PJ
Yeah.
is
So
analyzing me on my podcast. This is wonderful.
I can't help myself. I love this stuff. Right? I love this stuff. So just for clarification, you're driving through the fog, meaning confusion, right?
Yeah.
And when you're in confusion in the fog, you don't really see opportunities. You just maybe sort of see right in front of you, and it's not clear what's right in front of you or what's coming. But you take that breath and you keep moving anyway because that's what you do, right? Driving through the
Mm-hmm.
fog.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the obstacle, the one thing that you were trying to resolve and figure out and like get a hold of it and go, aha, you are the problem. You're trying to reach for it and it just gets further and further and further
Yeah.
away.
Yeah.
So when I journal, when I coach my clients to journal, I usually do this in the mirror again, right? So when I talk to the mirror, I call it Namaste talks because Namaste
Mm.
is the divine in me recognizes the divine in you,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's like I'm making an effort to talk to something deeper than just me,
Mm.
what I might refer to as God, but also talking to my unconscious mind. And so what'll happen is and I encourage people in the journal to say, why are we upset? We meaning me, the conscious mind, and me, my unconscious mind. So why are we collectively upset?
Mm.
Because I
Mm.
want to make sure that I'm on the same page with the unconscious mind. So what
Yeah.
happens is the more you write the things that are bothering you and irritating you and frustrating you, eventually what happens is you throw up what I call the hook. You
Mm.
you throw up what you swallowed, the hook
Mm.
that got
Mm.
you. Somebody said something, somebody did something, you came to believe something, you experienced some kind of programming in your life, you bought into it, your brain started to believe that that was the truth, you swallowed that hook. When you
Yeah.
swallow that hook, it's stuck inside of you. When you throw it up, all of a sudden you'll know when you've thrown it up because you're like, oh, that's what's bothering me.
Yeah.
So when you're driving through the
Yeah.
fog and that problem, that obstacle that you're going after, that was the hook that you'd swallowed, and your unconscious mind wasn't ready for you to reveal it. Because if it revealed it and you resolved the issue, you have all this guilt that you're carrying, and you don't know what you're going to do once you resolve it. Like, oh, wait, if I solve that problem, I've defined myself as this person back here. If you solve that problem, I don't know who I am when I step out of the fog.
Hmm.
That's scary for people,
Yeah.
right? And that's
That
one of the
is.
reasons that feeling guilty um, for trying to remove the guilt or letting go of the guilt, that happens because again, that's the unconscious mind saying, "Hey, I'm going to reach out of the fog. I'm going to grab you and pull you back into the fog like a horror movie and pull
Mm-hmm.
you back in because if you go out there, I don't know how to keep you under containment or keep you safe. So I'm going to hold you back here." So when we step out and away from the things that are scary for us and we say, look, yes, I can do this, yes, I can do this, I don't know how, but yes, I can do that, and I'm going to figure out how. We step out of that fog, and then all of a sudden we step into what it is that we want to do. The part of our brain is going to try to pull us back and say, we can't, you're never going to make it,
Mm-hmm.
all these people are going to judge you, all these things are going to happen. But as long as you say, no, I can do that and I'm going to do that, and I move forward, and you keep driving in that direction, your brain comes with you. Your unconscious mind will shift and go, okay, I guess this is our new way. But the problem is we step out of the fog and our unconscious pulls us back in, and we go, no, I really want that, but I'm just going to succumb to what it is that you're saying. So one of the things that I do in the morning, Eddie, is when I wake up in the morning, and I'm not a good morning person, meaning I don't really want to wake up, but I also don't want to stay in bed all day. Like if
Right.
I sleep past 8 o'clock, if I sleep to 8 o'clock in the morning, I feel like I've wasted my day,
Mm-hmm.
right? So let's say I roll out of bed at 7. I roll out of bed like this. right? Kind of from being, oh, I'm still sleepy. I don't want to get up, right? But I'm not
Mm-hmm.
mean by any means. I'm not angry. I'm just like, oh, my body wants to sleep. The moment I become aware of that, I go, okay, I am in reaction. My part of my brain wants to still stay. Part of my brain wants to stay asleep, and so I'm in this like, no, I want to stay asleep mode, and the conscious me, is uh, is giving in to what that part of my brain wants. So the moment I'm aware and I go, okay, hold on, I lift my eyebrows, I force myself to smile, I open my eyes brighter, and I force myself to feel good. Force myself to feel happy. I force myself to feel joyful. Force myself to feel grateful. I force myself to sit up straight and feel empowered and confident and ready for the day, and confident and empowered, like driven, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because when I do this, I do this intentionally because it's a muscle. The more I work it out, the stronger I get.
Yeah.
And so the more I
Yeah.
do it, when I wake up and I go, Frumpy, I don't, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, nope, open those eyes, lift those eyebrows, open the eyes, smile, get aligned, get focused. Nope, I want to be like this. I want to be empowered. I want to be focused. I want to be ready. I want to be happy. I want to be glad. Okay. It forces me to say, nope, I choose who I am.
Yeah.
Not back
Yeah.
here, not the unconscious mind. I choose how I want to experience my life. I choose how I'm going to show up. This is
Yeah.
really important because it's that mindset that you talked about. If we
Mm-hmm.
can't consciously choose who we are in that moment, we are a slave. Reaction is a slave action. There are only
Mm-hmm.
two kinds of people in the world. There are free people and there are slaves. And if we are a slave to our unconscious mind, if we are a slave to, like, oh, I woke up on the wrong side of the bed. Okay, so shift. I don't care that you
Mm-hmm.
woke up on the wrong side of the bed. What I care about is, do you want to be a slave to whatever that part of your brain is doing? Or do you want to say, no, I don't like feeling like that. I want to feel like this. So I'm going to shift. Right?
Yeah.
That's the power of A, awareness, and B, letting go, and C, committing. And sometimes you have to get excited and say, no, all right, I'm going to get excited about shifting. All right, I'm excited that I get to be empowered. Woo woo. Right? This is just the process. And most people won't do it. So when we
Mm-hmm.
circle back to how do you know you have a good client, you say, okay, you want to be better? And they say, yeah, I just don't know how to do it. Cool. Do this and then get back to me. Okay, cool. I did this and this is what happened, man. It was amazing. Wow. I didn't realize I had that personal power. Yeah, you do. Ready for stage
Mm-hmm.
two? I definitely am ready for stage two.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to shift gears real quick, man. So one of the things, and again, I shouted out my wonderful wife Lima, and I gotta shout out Stevie, my son too, because he helps out too, and it is one of the most helpful things. And I think this was part of the obstacle for me, and I think it happens for so many other people, is when somebody says, well, it really helps if somebody's there to help hold you accountable. And I think some people, when they hear the word accountable, it's like, oh man, okay, somebody's gonna be on my back all the time.
Right,
But
right.
I also think that I once heard somebody talk about accountability. I heard a leader talk about accountability,
Yeah.
and I couldn't help but think when they talked about it, it actually came across as toxic, because they were talking to a
Oh,
group of
interesting.
people, and they said, you said you wanted accountability. Well, here it
Yeah.
is. And I'm going, man, I
Mm,
was like, now you're weaponizing it.
yeah,
There's a
yeah.
speaker I heard, Alan Stein,
Uh-huh.
and he said something that really helped me put accountability into its proper context. He said
Okay.
accountability is something that you do for someone.
Yes.
And when he said that, it helped me relax myself about asking people to hold me accountable, and it really helped me relax myself as far as letting people, and this was a hard thing for me, letting people help me with the obstacles,
Yeah, for
because
sure.
I didn't want help at one point. I was like, I got it, I'll do this. I'm a man. Right. So struggle like a bull. But
Yes.
so
Yes.
but it was really interesting to hear somebody talk about accountability in such a positive way.
Yeah.
And I do wonder for you, um, when you are working with people, Do you encounter this thing when people kind of tense up when they hear the word accountability, or if you mention,
Yeah.
hey, it helps if you, I don't know if you've ever told somebody, hey, maybe you want an accountability partner or something like that. But have you ever seen that from somebody as they have worked on their obstacles, or you've worked with them on their obstacles?
Yeah, pretty much every time, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
when somebody says, when somebody tenses up like that, you know they're not actually ready. But
Yeah.
when somebody says, "Hey, man, I know I'm struggling here and here and here. Can you be accountable? Or can you help me be accountable?" Then I know that they want the help,
Mm-hmm.
because what they're saying is, "I know that I've got some weaknesses, and I want to push past those. Can
Yeah.
you hold me accountable? Can you help me? Can you be in service to me, to inspire me, to pick me up, to help me remember the reasons that I'm doing this, to get me in
Mm.
motion again?" Because what they're saying is, I really want that thing out there, but there's an awful lot of anchors that I'm dragging from my past, and a big boulder in front of me that I'm trying to push against, and a weight pushing down on top of me. And there's something holding my ankles down in the muck and the mud, or pulling me underwater. And yet I still want that out there.
Yeah.
And so I need, and I know I'm going to be tired, because I'm in so much resistance, but that's what I really want. So when I'm struggling, when I'm going under, can I reach out to you and you pick me back up and hold me accountable and remind me why I'm doing this? Absolutely.
Mm.
Because sometimes they get lost in the problems and they get distracted. Our biggest, uh, our biggest enemies really are distraction and self doubt,
Hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
um, and blame falls under distraction, because
Mm-hmm.
we've taken the attention and the awareness off of ourselves. We've taken the attention and the awareness off of what we want, right? Resilience is born from commitment. So the moment we get committed, we instantly become more resilient.
Mm-hmm.
And people that are really committed, they want an accountability partner. And it's
Yeah.
funny because when you said you're talking to somebody about leadership, and instantly I thought, well, you know, a leader is accountable because they want the best for the people that they're leading. And so they're accountable to those people that they're leading, right? And so those people, when you say they're accountable to those people, it means that they want those people to have something better than what they currently have, or they
Mm-hmm.
want those people to survive in a particular way or experience a particular thing. So they're in service to the people that they're leading, the people
Mm-hmm.
that trust them, and it's the people that trust them, the followers. It's their job to hold the leader accountable also, and say, "Hey, I know you want to help us. Can I help you help me in the way that works best? Can I share with you, this works best for me when you say it this way?"
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I mean, that's the same in a relationship between a husband and a wife, right? We want to hold each other accountable, but we also want to be accountable to the way they're holding us accountable, right? So if I'm not saying something correctly to a partner, then uh, you know, she can certainly say something like, "Hey, um, you asked me to hold you accountable. You said you would do this, and you didn't." I can always say, "Oh, you're right. I did not follow through, and I told you I would, and you came to me once already. I think what would help me, so now I'm helping her help me be accountable. I think what would help me is if you did it this way the first
Mm-hmm.
time, because the first time you did it, when you did it this way, it sort of let me out." I'm being kind of vague,
Yeah. Yeah.
just
Yeah.
because I'm seeing, only because I'm seeing that accountability flows both ways,
I was gonna
right?
say, yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
about
It's
giving
yeah.
and giving, but it's also about receiving.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That makes sense. That makes perfect sense, man. So PJ, you know what? Consider yourself the obstacle, the king of overcoming obstacles. Because no, I mean because I think the way that you see it, though, I mean the way that you're able to put that in a perspective for people so that they can be more resilient and they can continue to move on. That anchor thing is pardon the pun, is heavy. So um, PJ,
Yeah,
if people
yeah.
want to find out more about you, how can they find out more about you?
Yeah, man, I'd love to talk to people. Just simply go to my website. It's easiest. pjswisdom.com. pjswisdom.com. That's the easiest place to find me, and email me or call, or check out the social media sites. So that's always just easiest. pjswisdom.com.
Yeah,
No
and
apostrophe, PJS.
and by the way, I mean, you got to check out PJ's Instagram. You got to check out his YouTube. I mean, because there is so much good stuff on there. So PJ,
Adding stuff all the time. Thanks, man.
thank you so much, my friend. Thank you for joining me on the podcast. You're the man. I don't care what
Thank
anybody
you.
else says. I don't care what they say about you on Yelp or any other. I haven't seen anything on Yelp, but anyway, I don't care what they say about you, my brother. Thank you so much, man. Thank you for joining
Thank
me.
you, man. Thank you. It was a real honor to be here. A real pleasure, and I love this conversation. Honestly, I wish we could have like expanded this for like another hour because there's so much that we could get into, and actually like dig really deep. So maybe we can do this again sometime.
Don't worry, you got to stand an invitation. It's my podcast. You got this.
Thanks, brother.
A bunch of thanks to PJ Dixon for joining me on this episode of For Our Edification. If you want to find out more about PJ, you can go to the show notes and you'll see the link to his website and you'll get to see some really, really good stuff on him. His videos are really cool, like I said before. And make sure you check out past episodes of For Our Edification by going to eddiefrancis.com. You can also go to YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Hey, I'm only asking you to do 3 things here, okay? Download, give feedback, and share. I'm Eddie Francis for Dr. Halim Malik Francis. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of For Our Edification.